Are you strong? We're not talking muscles, right? Not talking your electrocardiogram even. Not that heart. We're not talking cholesterol or PSA count. We're talking you. When you strip away all the front of the makeup, the hairdo, the physique, the gait, when all that's gone, are you strong?
How can we find strength for life's challenges? In this episode of Light and Truth, John Piper turns to Hebrews 13:9 to show how the unchanging grace of Jesus strengthens our hearts for faithful living. This sermon was originally delivered at Bethlehem Baptist Church on September 21st, 1997.
Verse 9. Do not be carried away by varied and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened. There's the key word I've latched onto. It is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods through which those who were so occupied were not benefited. Now, get very clear. The strength being spoken of here is strength of heart, not body. The heart, I believe in this context, is the you that is not material. The you that loves. The you that gets angry. The you that grieves over a lost loved one. The you that makes decisions. The you that's happy or sad. The you that is you that's not the body. The you that will go to heaven or hell when you die. I think that's what this is talking about. It's the same thing that Paul meant in Ephesians 3:16 when he prayed, I bow my knees before the Father, from whom the whole family in heaven and on earth is named, that you might be strengthened according to the riches of His glory through His Spirit in the inner man. Strengthened in the inner person. That's the you that's not material. It's not this stuff. It's not the seeing with physical eyes or the talking with the physical tongue or the hearing with physical ears. It's the you that has all these desires and longings and yearnings and hurts and hopes and pains and joys. That you should be strengthened. Needs to be strong, according to this verse 9. It says, it is good for the heart to be strengthened. So let me ask you, are you strong? We're not talking muscles, right? Not talking your electrocardiogram even. Not that heart. We're not talking cholesterol or PSA count. We're talking you. When you strip away all the front of the makeup, the hairdo, the physique, the gait, when all that's gone, are you strong? So get real clear here the kind of strength we're talking about and what the heart is in verse 9. It is good for the heart to be strengthened. Let me change the question. Instead of just asking, are you, your humility might move you to say, I'm weak. Fine. Let me ask this question. Do you want to be strong? Do you want to be strong? Now, when I read verse 9 and it says, it is good for the heart to be strengthened. If I, putting myself in your shoes right now, hearing me ask that question, if I were to say, oh no, I don't really want to be strong, I would say, well, that's disobedient. Because it says it's good for the heart to be strengthened. So I think you should want to be strong this morning. When you hear me say this, you should be sitting there, no matter how weak you feel on the inside, you should be saying, okay, I hear it. It's the Bible. It's not just Pastor John. The Bible says it's good for my heart to be strengthened. Therefore, before this service is over, I would like to be strengthened. I would like that. And just whisper a prayer. God, do that. Do that. If it's the will of God revealed in verse 9, do it. Do it for me. I came in very weak. I don't feel like a strong person. My heart feels like it's going to break, or is so tired, or so confused, or so full of doubts, or whatever. I couldn't say, yes, I'm strong. Just say now, okay, it's good to be strengthened. I want to be strengthened. Help me be strengthened. And then listen and see if God might strengthen you. Verse 9 tells us where to turn for it, so let's turn. It says, turn to grace, not food. Let's read it. Do not be carried away with varied and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods, through which those who were so occupied with foods were not benefited. Now, evidently, let's try to put some pieces together here. Evidently, something's going on in this church that could be called strange and diverse teachings relating to foods. Right? That's not reading too much in, is it? Don't be carried away by these strange teachings as though the heart could be strengthened by foods and not by grace. Now, I don't know what the strange teaching was, and I don't think anybody knows, and I'm sort of glad we don't know, because that frees us now to just meditate on the strange teachings that are around today concerning foods. And then not have anybody say, yeah, but that's not what it was talking about in the Bible. You don't know. So I'm just going to throw up a few yellow flags here. There are religious food regimens and there are secular food regimens that people turn to, sometimes obsessively, to find hope and strength. For example, religious food regimens. The first one that comes to mind is fasting. Anybody know any books on fasting? Beware. Tom Steller said, oh, this comes almost as close to being the best first line in your book as the missions book. Beware of books on fasting. It's the first line in the book. It's not an accident. Beware of people that come to you with food regimens to fix your life, including fasting, or sacramentalism. If you just take the Lord's Supper the right number of times from the right person, you get enough grace to carry on. Or vegetarianism. Before the fall, they didn't eat meat. If you get back to paradise, you won't ruin your body. And you'll be more spiritually fit. This meat stuff is what's ruined everybody's life. Or there are a lot of secular routines, food supplements, vitamins, antioxidants, organic diets, fat-free, sugar-free, caffeine-free, chemical-free, and sometimes, not all the time, okay? Little parenthesis to bail me out here. I got up this morning and with a flare went to the counter in front of my wife and daughter and put 8 big fat vitamin tablets in my hand and swallowed them down and said to Noel, vitamins are going to take a hit in church this morning, so I'm free. You get it? They're not the answer, folks. And sometimes these things become obsessive and subtly the regimen of food starts to make promises, and you start to live by those promises and hope in those promises and build your life around those promises. If I eat right, fast right, my life will be happy and I'll be strong. And verse 9 says, it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace and not by foods. It's an alien teaching. And so I just say, beware. Beware. I don't know what the teaching was. Rather, positively, be strengthened by grace. Let's learn now, in the next few minutes, how to be strengthened in this desire factory called our heart. Let's learn how to be strengthened by grace, okay? How do you do it? If you don't eat food as the answer to your weakness, how do you eat grace? You wake up in the morning and you feel guilty, dirty, some ugly thing you said the night before to somebody, some neglected good deed you knew you should have done, or you feel like a failure. Your job has just gone so bad, you get one slip after the other. So failure, guilt, defilement. What do? Well, the alien teaching says, eat a good breakfast and take some good vitamins and get some sugar in your blood and, if necessary, caffeine, and get out in the light. That's the best the world can do. Tack on a few psychological regimens to go with it. And God says to this person lying in bed, feeling so dirty and such a failure they don't want to get out of bed, get your heart strengthened by grace. On a morning like this, eat grace for breakfast. Eat grace for breakfast. How? Well, let's go to verse 10. We have an altar from which those who serve the tabernacle have no right to eat. So he's talking about eating still. Hasn't left the issue of this false teaching that's trying to fix people with food. We have an altar which those who serve the tabernacle have no right to eat. Now, what in the world is he talking about? What's the altar? Who are these people who have no right to eat? Why don't they have a right to eat? What's the food? This is a very opaque verse. I think he means this. Those who serve the tabernacle are the priests in Jerusalem, or historically, who made sacrifices and who in this case have rejected Jesus as their Messiah and continue right on making sacrifices, even though those sacrifices all pointed to Jesus as the end point. The fulfillment, the completion of that whole sacrificial system is Jesus, and He has died once for all to put away sin by the sacrifice of Himself. And so these folks that are still doing that in Jerusalem have no right to eat at our altar, which is what? The cross. The last sacrifice was sacrificed on the altar outside the city, the cross of Jesus. And when He was sacrificed, a banquet was spread of what? Not meat, not foods, grace. And so if you want to eat grace, you go to the altar, which is Christ crucified for our sins. And that's where we eat. And so as you lie there in bed and you feel filthy because of the ugliness of the previous day, and you feel like a failure because of the grade you got, or because of the way business is going, or because of the way you let some relationship down, or because of some nasty thing somebody said to you, the only hope this text offers is not food. You see, don't do this with food. Do this with grace. Go to the altar. Go to the cross. We have an altar, it says, namely the crucified Christ. Now verse 11, what is, he goes on and he unpacks this a little further because he's thinking of the Day of Atonement in Leviticus 16. This writer knows his Old Testament and unpacks it for all it's worth. Let me give you the background for verse 11. In the Day of Atonement, this is one day a year in the Jewish calendar where a bull and a goat, actually two goats, but one of them was a scapegoat and was let go in the wilderness, but two of them were killed. The blood was taken from the bull and the goat, was taken by the priest into the tent, then into the Holy of Holies. The blood was sprinkled on the ark to cover the sins of all the people that they'd committed that year. He walks out and they take the bodies of the bull and the goat, and unlike other sacrifices, they don't eat them. They take them outside the camp and burn them up. And this writer reads that and says, what's that about? Any meaning there for Jesus? And what he concludes is this: on the Day of Atonement, when the decisive sacrifice of a bull and a goat are offered and the blood is sprinkled, the only thing to eat is forgiveness and hope. No meat. No meat this time. The meat goes outside the camp and gets burned up. So the point is, on the Day of Atonement, you don't come to God for food, except the food of grace, the food of hope, the food of forgiveness, which is the food we really need. Let's read verse 11 so you see that. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holy place by the high priest as an offering for sin are burned outside the camp. Now verse 12, he makes a comparison here. Therefore, Jesus also, that he might sanctify the people through his own blood, suffered outside the gate. In other words, here's the way I think his mind is working. He's saying the Day of Atonement was all pointing toward the last and final sacrifice of Jesus. It was a day in which, when the sacrifice was made and the blood was shed, there was no eating of the sacrifice except the benefits of forgiveness and hope that come through forgiveness. So Jesus, like those animals were burned up outside the gate, he got consumed by suffering outside the gate. A baptism of fire and conflagration consumed him outside the gate. And there's where our meal is prepared. And it isn't meat. It isn't food. It's grace. So when you wake up and you feel rotten, guilty, like a failure, don't say, what I need is a pancake. Eggs, granola, coffee, caffeine. I speak from some experience here. There are many mornings in my life when the breakfast of grace is my only means of survival. We're talking survival in the ministry, in the marriage, as a parent. And to pass on the breakfast of granola is no achievement. It's just desperation. I ate lunch with Tom Steller yesterday. He's back for a day from Wheaton. And we were getting each other up to date, and I was talking about Joe and his death, and Danny and his death, and the 4 or 5 of you that are struggling with cancer right now, and the stresses of those kinds of things, and we looked each other in the face and smiled and said, this is the greatest work in the world. Because it's desperate work. A leader has to have a strong heart, because people come to you with hard questions about theology. They come to you with absolutely mind-boggling perplexities of life, needing wisdom. They come to you with unbelievable brokenness, needing healing. They come to you with anger about the way things are going in the church or in their lives, and need an ear that doesn't return evil for evil. Where, I ask you, does anybody get resources for that relentless drainage? And the answer is, we have an altar. We have a table. We have no choice. We have to be strong. And you know what? You do too. And we have an altar. We have an altar, Jesus Christ's grace. And that's why verse 8 is so powerful. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. You know the point of that verse? The point of that verse is the grace of the cross, which is infinite in magnitude, in declaring the love that Jesus has for us, is the same magnitude of love and power and grace with which He stands right here. Right now. And tomorrow. And every tomorrow after that.
This is Light and Truth, God-centered preaching to help you see Christ clearly and treasure Him truly. I'm your host, Dan Kruver. Thank you for listening. On our next episode, John Piper continues our 8-part series, The Gospel Changes Everything for Us, with a sermon titled, Jesus Calls Us Toward Need. I hope you'll join us. For more resources, visit desiringgod.org.